Hi, welcome to another video. Today I am doing my book Babble on Aquawar. Okay, right. This is gonna be a mess. This is gonna be long, this is gonna be painful. I'm kind of dreading filming it because I feel like I've got so much to say and I'm definitely going to forget things. So I do just kind of want to dive in. I've made notes and I've got 8 pages of notes. I could have kept going, but I thought just make them quick and simple and I'll blab the rest. But I'll have them there to help me as I go. Okay, first things first. This will be full of spoilers for the first book, the second book and the third book. If you have not read all 3 of the A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury and A Court of Wings and Ruins book, then please don't watch. Don't go any further. If you want like a general overview, I love them. I love the whole trilogy. You should definitely read them if you haven't, but don't watch, okay? I managed to acquire 4 copies of this book. Yeah, 4 copies of this book I managed to acquire. So, the first one is my hardcover. I absolutely love this and oh, it's just so pretty. Second one was sent to me, the one I ordered from Amazon, because my hardcover wasn't supposed to be here until the 25th of May, which obviously it arrived on release day, so I don't know what was up with that. But because that wasn't supposed to be here until the 25th of May, I ordered a paperback as well. And I've had it squished together to try and flatten out the pages, but if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that the inside of my book was absolutely trashed. So I've kind of flattened them out. But this whole wad of first pages were folded in, absolutely mashed and destroyed. I mean, it's still readable now that I've like flattened it out and I've put like weight on each side. It's definitely readable, so I don't know what I'm going to do with this copy. But yeah, there. I complained about that, which then meant that they sent me another copy, which is this one. But before this arrived, I needed a paperback copy that I could read. So a friend of mine bought me another paperback. So this is the paperback that I have read. So this is the one I'm keeping hold of with my hardback, because I'm obviously going to keep that. This is the mashed copy from Amazon that I don't know what I'm going to do with. So this copy I'm currently hosting a giveaway for on my Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, the link's always down in the description, and you can win yourself this copy. It closes on the 29th of May, so if you want it, go and check that out. Okay, so now I suppose we should get into the babble about this actual book. First up, overall thoughts, like overall opinion, summary of how I feel about it. Overall, this book was fantastic. I absolutely loved it through and through. I gave it 5 stars. That probably shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone because it's fantastic. I gave the first one 5 stars, I gave the second one 5 stars, I gave the third one 5 stars. I love this series so much. I love the characters, I love the character development, I love the plot, I love everything about these books, and I loved pretty much everything about this one. So 5 stars. They're easy to love, the characters are easy to fall in love with. Overall, really positive thoughts on this book, which shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone. The relationships formed in this book are lovely. Some of the character development we see is lovely. Sarah's writing is beautiful and her ability to write emotion really speaks to me. Like, the feelings that I feel from these books is insane. Like, when she's writing like a scene of pure panic or fear, you can feel it, and I just think that's magical. So yeah, I did give it 5 stars, but I will say that I don't think it was as good as A Court of Mist and Fury. A Court of Mist and Fury is still my favourite, but I'm still giving it 5 stars because I still loved it. I just think that A Court of Mist and Fury kind of holds a point in my heart and my life where nothing can really beat it because I loved it so much. And I also did really love this, but just not as much. But it's still a 5-star book and I still absolutely adored every page of it. Something I want to point out is the difference between the 3 books. The first book and the second book, I feel, although the first book was quite plot driven, but A Court of Mist and Fury was definitely more of a character driven book. You were much more, or at least I was much more invested in Akamath for the character development, because everyone in that book underwent some severe character development, and I think that's why it was so special. This book, definitely more plot driven. There is much less character development in this than there are the other ones. You're definitely more on the journey for this one. The plot, what's happening, the end goal. there isn't much character development, there isn't much emotional development, and in a way, the lack of emotional development in this book kind of disappointed me, because I was expecting to be absolutely torn apart from the inside, and I wasn't, but I still loved it. I feel like I'm going to be saying this a lot, so I really do want to put this out there. I gave this 5 stars. I loved it through and through, but that doesn't stop me from looking at it critically. That isn't going to stop me from pointing out things that I was disappointed in, from pointing out things that I think could have been done better. Just because there are things that I think could have been done better or disappointed me doesn't mean it's not a 5-star read for me, doesn't mean I didn't absolutely adore it. Okay? So if I point out things critically or something that you don't agree with or whatever, it's just my opinion, but don't get me wrong throughout any of this. I adored it so much. It was my absolutely most anticipated read of this year. I got it on release day and I read it within 3 days. And I mean, it's not a tiny book, but I don't want you to misunderstand me and think that I'm like shaming the book at all, because I loved it. But I am gonna say things if I think they're worth discussion. And there are some things that are worth discussion. So yeah, now that that's out of the way. Major plot points that I want to discuss. The whole beginning. The whole start where Feyre is in the Spring Court, absolutely tearing them apart from the inside out. She is being like manipulative and sneaky, and I love it. I think Feyre is absolutely at her prime there. The way that she like manipulates Tamlin into thinking that Lucien's a threat, and the scene where she's like hugging Lucien in her nightgown outside her bedroom and stuff. How she'd like plotted it so specifically to have that reaction. How she'd been like giving Tamlin those glances to make him think that that was the night that she was ready to finally share a bed with him again, and then he goes there to find her hugging Lucien, like plotting those doubts into people to make them feel insecure. The way she absolutely ripped Ianthe apart from the inside out, stealing her thunder with that glowing at the what was it, some sort of ritual thing where she was glowing and stealing Ianthe's thunder because Feyre was cauldron blessed and Ianthe had never shown any signs of being like blessed like that. I think it was all so perfect, and the way that, I don't even know if Lucien was properly aware of how he played such a vital role in that for her. It was almost like they were working together without Lucien really knowing it. And then when Feyre saved Lucien from Ianthe, because they had to sleep together on Calamme and that happened, and then Ianthe thought she was like entitled to Lucien whenever she wanted it, and Feyre came along and was like, bitch, no, that is not how this works. You can't play games with people like that. I thought it was brilliant, and how she smashed her hand apart and got inside her brain, and loved it, loved it, loved it. And of course then there were the twins, the Hyben twins, I can't remember their names, and Lucien and Feyre absolutely ripped them apart and they were no longer an issue. The way that Feyre did that was absolutely epic, because obviously there was the use of the Faebane and the fact that they were, was it Daimate or something? The brain people. It was all just epic, and I think again that was another show of power from Feyre when she's at her best, and she's just unstoppable. She is epic. I love her as a character, and from the way that she's developed from the first book to this one is just such a journey, and one worth going on. One of the bullet points I've got in my notes is Jurian knows, and at that point early on in the book, obviously later on we know that Jurian did know, but early in the book when Jurian was like giving her glances and smirks and stuff, I was like, something is up with him. He knows. He is not as evil as they think he is. He knows that there is that thing with Rhys, and obviously Jurian knew Rhys before, so Jurian knew that Rhys wasn't this horrible monster that everyone made him out to be, and I think he was subtly making that apparent to Feyre, like making sure she knew that he was still playing the part of the villain so well, and I loved that. Feyre takes Lucien with her, and they have that confrontation where he says, I didn't realise I was the villain in your narrative, and I thought that was touching and great, and he says, like, you didn't just leave him, you left us, and he felt abandoned by her as well. And I think that confrontation was really needed, because the character development for Lucien throughout this book is insane. Like, if we go back to Actar in the very beginning, where he was an absolute arsehole to Feyre, he's come so far, and again, character development is a journey worth going on for him. So she runs away. She's torn the spring court apart from the inside out. She's made everyone doubt themselves. She's kind of like made no one trust Tamlin, because she made herself so beloved in the spring court that when she's made it out that Tamlin's abused her, Tamlin got aggressive and shattered another room and she didn't shield herself, so she was covered in scars and bruises and stuff. So she's made it out that Tamlin is aggressive and abusive, which, to be fair, yeah. So people don't trust him, and it's kind of torn apart his hold on them, which is what she wanted. So when she's kind of achieved that, she's off to the Night Court again. But because of the Fabane, she can't winnow. She has to go on the journey until the Fabane wears off. And she takes Lucien with her, and that's when they have that confrontation. And he goes with her because he wants his mate back, which is obviously Elaine. And then they bump into Lucien's brothers, and Lucien's brothers want to kill them, blah blah blah. And then Cassian comes with Azriel to save the day. And the last time we saw Cassian in the end of Akamath, his wings were torn to shreds. And the first time we see him in Akawar, his wings are fine. That kind of had me a bit like, how? What? I thought it was like really devastating that his wings had been shredded. What's happened to make him okay again? I mean, I was happy for him, like, yay, no one wanted Cassian to be in that horrible position of not having his wings. But I was confused. But that's discussed later. So they take him back to the Night Court and they have their moment where they're all reunited, and it's beautiful. Like, Cassian taking them back to the Night Court, them seeing Mor and Amren, and obviously Lucien goes with them, and then Rhys comes in, and Feyre is so overwhelmed with emotion that she just collapses and cries, and doesn't care that people are witnessing her collapsing and crying, because the emotion that she feels is just too much to deal with. And that was a beautiful moment, and I loved it. And that takes me back to the way that Sarah does emotion, just makes it so real and you can really feel it, and that pure joy, like she was overwhelmed with happiness when she saw him, that she just collapsed, and Sarah wrote it beautifully. And then obviously Rhys takes her upstairs, but it made me really happy that after a month away, Rhys didn't just take her upstairs and bed her. He is better than that, and he spoke to her and made sure she was okay and comforted her emotionally, and it was gorgeous. It was a beautiful moment, and they're just so perfect. And then he like wanted to make sure that she wanted it and she wanted it and blah blah blah. But before that, he had to clean her because she was filthy. And he says that, are you going to have a bath or do you want me to lick every inch of you until you're clean? And she's like, I'd like to see you try, but a bath would be a better idea. And the bath scene I loved, where she was in the bath cleaning herself and Rhys just stood in the doorway watching her. I found that really enjoyable. Like, he didn't hurry her or join her or anything. He just stood and watched and like restrained himself, even though he like held onto the frame of the door so hard that he made the wood crack or something. I just really enjoyed that part. And then obviously he took her and bedded her, and we all know how those bits go. And that's another thing that Sarah's really good at writing. It's really enjoyable to read, isn't it? But yeah, that whole part where they're all reunited and she gets to be with Rhys again just made me so happy. And it was probably like my favourite part to read. Like that breakdown of emotion that Feyre had. It's just beautiful and I loved it. The next note I have written down is, I don't want to go through the whole book with you because presumably if you're here watching this you've read it. So I don't need to point out all the major plot points and stuff, because you've read it, so you know them, and you don't need me to stand here and go, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then that happened, because you already know that. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to mention bits that I particularly liked, or disliked, or provoked some sort of emotion in me. My next bullet point, I don't know if these bullet points are in order, in fact they're probably not. I've just bullet pointed bits that came to mind that I particularly enjoyed. And my first one is that scene where Mor and Feyre kick butt. And I think you know what scene I mean. When they go to the summer court because Hyben attacked the summer court, and they're just winnowing around, kicking butt and killing people and clearing out the servants' quarters, like they're saving so many people by just kicking butt, and I love it. It was fantastic. That was kind of what rebuilt the friendship between Tarquin and the Night Court because he said you came and you helped, and then Amren's like, yeah, Varian warned us. Tarquin's like, I take back the blood rubies, there's no debt between us anymore. And that was lovely because they did go and help without expecting anything, and that's really what the Night Court are all about. Even though everyone sees them as that horrible group of monsters, they're not. They're angels. And I loved Tarquin's redemption of those blood rubies and stuff. And then I can't remember who it was that said, like, don't expect Amren to give hers back, she quite likes it. I loved the meeting of all of the High Lords and getting to meet all of the High Lords, which was splendid. So many new characters and it was great, and I almost kind of hate the fact that we met so many new characters with so little left to go, because we couldn't really get a feel for them all. But you know, there's going to be more books, so maybe we will in future get more of a feel for the rest of them. Maybe there'll be like little novellas about each of them. I don't know what we're going to get, but I almost hated her for introducing all of these fantastic new characters because I wanted to know more about them. But I loved it anyway, and I loved them all kind of feeling each other out and trying to reach common ground and stuff, and Beren being an arse, but whatever. I still really enjoyed it, and I loved seeing Helion, however you want to say that, and his different mask between being in the meeting and then being with them alone and stuff, and like it just makes you think that all of these High Lords have their mask that they put on for an occasion and then take off when they're in comfortable situations. But yeah, I loved that meeting and meeting all of them and then reaching that common ground and then them being like a united front, because it was needed. They needed to be brought together, and I think it's fantastic that Rhys was able to do that. Next point is Tamlin's got some nerve and pissed everyone off. Of course. Tamlin is almost a whole different discussion really, isn't he? Because on one hand we all hate him, but I think hate could potentially be too strong of a word, because although he's an arsehole and he is a tool, and he did put Feyre in those uncomfortable positions, and he did like trap her and kind of abuse her and stuff. At the same time, if you really think about it and try and put yourself in his mind, like as Luthien said before, I didn't realise I was the villain in your narrative. That's kind of the point that Tamlin's at. Like Tamlin didn't understand that he was the villain, and he does feel turned on, so you can kind of understand his actions, but later on he does kind of have his redemption, and I don't know if it completely redeems him for everything that he's done, but when she needed that help to fly, he sent her that breeze, and without that she would have died. So he saved her life, which is a massive thing. And then also when it came to Rhys's death, which we will talk about later, he did offer his little kernel of light to bring him back to life. And he says to Feyre, just be happy or something. And again, that's a big thing. Like, that was his closure on her. Like, he wants her to be happy. He is heartbroken and he is devastated and he does feel attacked and victimised and stuff, but he still loves her and wants her to be happy. Even though it's taken him an inordinate amount of time to realise this, he does realise it. And then we kind of close the door on Tamlin there. It's difficult, I think, because we all still hate him for what he's done, but he does have that sort of redemption factor there. So yeah, I'll leave it at that with Tamlin, because I feel like everyone's going to have very differing opinions on whether he deserves redemption or not. So chat about it down below. My next point is, I liked the fact that Luthien had a role within the Inner Circle. So obviously he's just adopted by the Inner Circle, kind of by surprise. He's just taken in and he doesn't really know them, he doesn't really trust them. Everything that he thought he knew about them's kind of flopped on its head, and he's thrust into this Inner Circle and doesn't have anything to do, but then he does. And his role is to go and find the cursed queen, Vassa, and I liked the fact that he had a role, he had a purpose, he had something to go and do to help. As I have already said, the character development for Luthien throughout this is insane. Like, we learn so much about him, so much about his family, and there's the whole thing of his dad isn't his dad, his mum was having an affair with Helion, which could potentially make him Helion's only heir, and I think so much had happened with Luthien in this that at the end, although we've had all this development on him, it hasn't gone anywhere. And we don't know if Elaine is going to accept the mating bond or not. We don't know what's happening there. So I feel like it's almost inevitable that something in future is going to be about Lucien. Whether we get a whole novel from Lucien's perspective, whether we get a novella about Lucien after the events of this, I don't know. But I think there's going to be more on him because there was so much development for it to go nowhere. Do you know what I mean? I loved the Asriel development. I don't really have too much to say about this, but just when Az was on his own with Feyre, we really got more of his personality come out and we could see his humour and just more of him. And that was nice because I think in the previous book he was kind of, you know, in his shadows, and he kind of came out a little bit more in this book, which was lovely. That also could bring me on to say, like, Az and Elaine had some feely moments, and I'm not sure about that. Like, could this potentially mean for a future, like, love triangle? Because obviously from Moore's revelation about her being gay, we know that Moore and Asriel isn't going to happen anymore, which is, I know, what a lot of people really wanted, but we know that isn't going to happen anymore. And Elaine and Asriel definitely had some moments, so it does lead me to wonder if Elaine's going to face like a choice between someone she gets along with and is starting to know and like, and her mate. Is she going to reject the mating bond for someone that she's grown close to, or what? I don't know how that's going to go, but there was definitely something there. I really liked the part where Cassian got angry at Feyre about not telling them that she was High Lady before she was taken back to the Spring Court. He like freaks out at her, like, you could have told us, you kept it a secret from us, we didn't know and then you were taken. Like, you being Rhys's mate is one thing, when you're Rhys's mate you belong to Rhys, but when you're our High Lady you belong to all of us, and we all have that duty to protect you and find you and help you, and you belong to all of us. And I really enjoyed that because it was just so raw and real. And I think that if your best mates did keep it a secret from you that they got married and then one of them was your queen suddenly and then she was taken away and you didn't know about that, you would feel attacked, you would be upset and you would be angry about it. And I think that's one thing with Cassian that I really like. He's like raw emotion and he gets angry and he lets it show. This bit is interesting, and I'm going to take my cardigan off because I'm getting really warm. I'm just hugging it because I love it. And I really, at this point, want you to know I loved it. I know I've already said it, but I loved it. I loved it. I loved the characters, I loved the relationship, I loved the plot, I loved everything. But this brings me on to a conversation that I had with Amina from Brown Girl Loves Books on Instagram. I will leave a link to her Instagram down below because I had a very long conversation with her about this book, and bits we loved, bits we didn't love, bits we had problems with, bits that could have been improved, blah blah blah. And if you want a really in-depth, critical conversation that is worth having, she is the person to have it with. Because this conversation really helped me clear things up in my head and really prepared me for doing this babble. Because I said to her before, like, I don't think I'm ready to do it because I want to make my babble worth babbling. I don't want to just stand here and aimlessly say, I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. Because as much as it's great to hear that people all love the same thing, and that's fantastic, it's also important to look at things that could have been done better. And just because it could have done better doesn't mean I didn't love it. Still 5 stars, I still absolutely loved it. But conversation with Amina brought some things up with me and we kind of discussed these things. I'm going to put this down and swap it for my notes because I've got a lot of notes. And you know what book we're talking about. Okay, so my first note here is, you can love a book and also look at it critically. I loved this book. You know that. So the first thing that me and Amina discussed were the things that we loved. And I've already told you all of the things that I loved, and there's a lot of it. Obviously also something I loved was the fact that there was a happy ending. Who doesn't love a happy ending? Okay. We also pointed out things that we were unsure about. One of these things is the Az, Lucy and Elaine love triangle thing. Where is that going to go? We're unsure, but I've already discussed that. 2, the lack of development and challenges. Right, I've already said at this point that there is a lot of character development for Lucien. Maybe there is a bit for Nesta. Nesta softens up a bit. There is a bit with Asriel. So there is some character development. But the first 2 books, we see some serious emotional development from Feyre. And then here, no more. There's no more development on her. She's reached her peak and there's nowhere else for her to go. So I feel like there potentially could have been some more development for her and maybe Rhys as well. I'm just going to go through my points because I feel like I'm going to overlap a lot. There was one scene where Feyre snapped at Rhys about him saying, like, oh, I don't think Valerius is ready for Nesta. And she's like, my sister's not an animal. That is the extent of the conflict between them. As a newly married couple, they have no conflict. There's no tension There's no development, I suppose. And don't get me wrong, I love their relationship. Of course I love their relationship. It's Feyre and Rhysand, of course, I love them, but I feel like there should have been some more conflict between them, just for conflict and resolution, like tension fights and make-up sex, you know? There could have been so much more for them as this newly married couple that's thrust into war. They act like they've been married for 50 years. And I get that they're mates, so they have that deep bond, and they're almost like in each other's head all the time anyway, which probably does prevent a lot of arguments and stuff, because they know each other's thoughts, so they always know where they're at and where they stand. But I just feel like there could have been so much more for them, but instead it was all very happy for them all the time. Next point, we had issues with Rhys's death. Right. 1. Yes, we cried. I cried. I was sad about it, my little heart was broken, but not for 1 second did I think that he was dead and not coming back. We've seen before a main character die, when Feyre died, and they all brought her back to life. And when Rhys died, of course that was what was going to happen. He wasn't going to remain dead. So that almost made it feel a little bit cliche, like what's the point in killing him off when he's just going to come back in literally like 2 pages or something. But during the time that he was dead, I really want to put out how much I loved this, because this is what made me cry. And possibly, quite possibly, my favourite part of this book, emotion-wise, is the absolute pure panic that Feyre felt when Rhys died. Like, her desperately clinging at what was left of the bond and finding nothing on the other end, and how her world just like collapsed and she couldn't contain herself. She was so devastated and angry and demanding of everyone to bring him back because she could not live without him. And I think that really just highlights why their relationship is so necessary. They cannot live without each other. And this takes us all the way back to ACOTAR, when Rhys's world collapsed in on itself, when Feyre's neck snapped. And he was the one that was aggressive and demanding that they all give their little kernel of light. So it's like role reversal there. They've both now died at some point, and they can't live without each other. And they won't, because they will find a way to bring each other back. So I did love that emotion, and again that really highlights for me how Sarah does emotion so well. Also, he brought Amren back with him. This annoyed me. It's almost like Sarah was scared to kill off a character. And I mean, we don't necessarily have to have Amren die when she made that sacrifice. She wins them the war and then she's off in her other form and she doesn't remember them. But Rhys brings her back. What does he say? He like offered her a hand to see if she wanted to come back, and she did. And she's there. And it almost makes the finality of Amren's sacrifice pointless. Because Amren completely sacrificed herself to save everyone that she loved and cared about. And that was so like heartwarming and touching and so final. And then it's almost like, no, never mind, we'll bring her back. I love it, because I love the fact that none of the inner circle was destroyed and got rid of. It's fantastic that they're all still together and it's all still one big happy family. But like, it's war, and the casualties that could have happened didn't, and anything slightly devastating was just taken back. Do you know what I mean? My next point, huge war and no major casualties. What's the likelihood? Was Maas scared to kill off characters other than the serial, which was sad, not gonna lie. It's literally what I wrote. So yeah, pretty much just covers what I've just said. The casualties that we saw, Rhys dying, Amren's sacrifice, Cassian's wings, anything damaging to our beloved characters was just righted within a couple of pages. Not even a couple of chapters, a couple of pages. There was no emotional trauma that anyone really had to go through, other than the like page of Feyre's panic when Rhys was dead. Other than that, there was no like real emotional struggle for anyone, which I feel is disappointing, because as I've pointed out, Sarah J Maas does emotion so well, and I don't think there was enough of it. Like, we've been waiting for this book. We want this book to destroy us, or we wanted anyway. We wanted this book to absolutely destroy us. We were prepared for devastation. And I don't feel like I got that devastation, other than in the one page where Rhys died. I didn't get that devastation. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy that there was a happy ending, but I would have liked more of the devastation to then be righted in the end. So like that conflict and resolution. I wanted the conflict to be more devastating, and then the resolution would have almost been sweeter, because there was more to write, do you know what I mean? Feyre's dad, what the fuck? Yeah, this is the point. The thing with Feyre's dad, annoyed me quite a bit because he almost popped up out of nowhere to come and save the day, and it was pointless because he died anyway. Like, we haven't heard from him for a really long time. Where's he come from? What's he doing? I mean, it's nice that he came back and was fighting in his final breath to save his daughters or something, which was something that he hadn't previously been able to do. So it was nice that we kind of got that final resolution for their father. But it was unrealistic, it was out of nowhere, it was just a bit And it didn't last long either, so kind of like, what was the point? Lots of things towards the end were questionable. Lots of things towards the end were questionable. I almost feel like the end was slightly rushed, which it shouldn't have been. The book could have just been longer. But one thing, Hybern just snaps the neck of this death god that's gone around killing thousands of people. And when it comes up to Hybern, he just snaps her neck and throws her to the Atol. But that was questionable. And my next point is one that probably annoyed me most, actually. The mirror of Ouroboros? Or something? Ouroboros. Let's just go with Ouroboros. This really annoyed me because the bone carver said, like, the one thing that he wanted in exchange for helping was that mirror, and Feyre had to go and retrieve it, and it turned out that it was just a test to see if she was worthy and if she could accept herself and stuff. So when she looked into that mirror and we learnt that it was, she would see the true her and all of the horrible things that she's done in her life, we didn't get the vivid vision that I wanted. It was almost kind of brushed over, like, yeah, it happened, but it doesn't matter. And to me that really matters, because I feel like there is where we could have had some more serious Feyre emotional development and some more emotional trauma. And that's what I feel that Sarah J Maas writes really well. And I feel there was a massive missed opportunity with not delving into that vision and seeing that emotional trauma and emotional development that we could have had with Feyre when she deals with what she sees in that mirror. I mean, we see a wolf, that's it. And I mean, there's lots of references to her being a wolf. I mean, obviously in the first book when she kills Andres, whatever his name is, he was a wolf. And there's lots of references to her being a wolf. She cannot be tamed, she cannot be caged, she's not someone's pet, blah blah blah. So the wolf thing I get, but I really would have liked to have seen more emotional trauma and emotional development through that vivid vision of her facing everything that she truly was. Because she would have seen all the deaths that she'd encountered, she would have killed Andreas again, she would have killed those 2 innocent fairies again that she does in ACOTAR, she would have dealt with that again. And we know how much that wrecked her the first time, and she's kind of broken and healing. And I feel like it really would have given something more to Feyre in this book. And I think that's a real missed opportunity, and I would have really liked to have seen that, and we didn't. Yeah, I've got another note here. Amina pointed out that this is a classic case of telling, not showing. And it is. We were told that she had to face everything that she was and deal with it, and the serial said to her, like, only you can decide what breaks you. And because obviously the mirror is supposed to break whoever sees it because they can't deal with it and they go crazy, and the serial told her that it wouldn't break her pretty much because she can decide what breaks her and she can accept herself. And I really wanted to see it, and we didn't. So that was a big disappointment for me. This brings me to my disappointment with my feels. With preparing for devastation and destruction, I wanted my heart to be torn out and shredded to ribbons, and I wanted to ugly cry, and I didn't. In fact, the only time I cried was when Rhys died and Feyre went through that, like, panic. Although I did shed a tear when Rhys also gave his, like, motivational speech before war about how his time with all of them was a gift and he was so lucky to have spent his days with them. I did cry a little bit then, but not as much as when Rhys died and we went through that trauma with Feyre. But I wanted more of that! I wanted to sob. I wanted to ugly cry and have my heart torn out, and it just didn't happen. And I was a bit disappointed by that. But at the same time, I'm glad we got a happy ending. But do you know what I mean? Like, again, this takes me back to the conflict and resolution. I wanted more conflict and more emotional trauma to be resolved and for everyone to have their happy ending. Another point that Amina and I discussed was that issues were solved almost immediately. Your wings are torn and shredded to ribbons. Just see a healer. It's fine. You died. Come back to life. It's fine. When Elaine was stolen away, like, we had her back within 4 pages. I think, again, that would have been a real good time to see some more emotional trauma, and I feel that would have been on Nesta's part, and we could have had some more development with Nesta there. When Elaine was gone, we could have seen some, like, panic and raw emotion from Nesta. And again, missed opportunity, because within 4 pages we had her back and it was fine. So it's solved. Problem, no problem. This is going to be an interesting bit. Time for an unpopular opinion. Now don't get me wrong, I love Faye Sand. Obviously. They're like literature couple goals. I love them so much. I love the emotion, I love their chemistry, I love everything about them. I love, like, when Feyre sees the bone carver as the little boy and she works out that it's their son, and Rhys is like, oh, can I see him? And she shows him and it was all just heartwarming and amazing. I loved when they were reunited and the raw emotion. I loved all of their relationship together. Even from the very first book, when he's helping her and putting bets on her in the first book, and like he sees her painting the stars, and it's just all absolutely beautiful. And I love them. But in this book, their chemistry is not so great. Okay, so my camera overheated and I don't know where I was, but I'm pretty sure I was saying, as a newly married couple thrust into war, you would expect there to be more tension and conflict. Which again takes me back to the whole conflict and resolution thing that I didn't feel there was enough of. When they were in the High Lord meeting thing, the one agreement that Rhys and Feyre had was that she would not show her powers, because that was a dangerous thing for her to do, because some of the High Lords would want to kill her to get their power back. And within 5 minutes, she's shown her powers, and she got mad, and she was a monster and was attacking people. And Rhys is kind of just like, oh no, it's fine, you did good. Which I suppose in the end, it worked out okay, because they all reached their final end point anyway, but there was no conflict and resolution on that. Let's just talk about Rhys for a little while. In ACOTAR, we see Rhys as this hugely flawed character, and we love him anyway. In ACOMAF, we have lots of character development on Rhys, but he's still flawed, he still gets angry, and we love him anyway. And I feel like in this book, he's almost too perfect, and don't get me wrong, I love him so much, but his flaws seem to just disappear. He was just too perfect almost, and like we loved him with flaws and all, and there wasn't that much within him. Like he was not as flawed as he used to be. It was almost too perfect. I don't know what else to say about that. I don't know where I'm going. He made one bad choice, and that's about the extent of bad choices that Rhys made, and that was letting Mor's dad have access to Valeris, and it absolutely broke Mor. She was devastated because her father only done it to take away one thing that she loved, and that was devastating. And I feel like that was the extent of bad choices that Rhys made. And I feel like in a war where tensions are high and stuff, you're gonna make bad choices, and only making one is quite limited and reserved. My next point is, it's okay to love a book and point out potential flaws, and I fucking loved this book. I love Faye Sand, and in a way I'm kind of glad that my heart wasn't totally broken, even though I was preparing for it to be. Moving on, away from those issues that I had. Although they weren't really issues, it was just like things, like there wasn't enough emotional trauma for me for a group of people that were being torn apart by war. Just didn't feel devastating enough, and some of the chemistry between Rhys and Feyre I feel just went, I still love them. I still love the Inner Circle, I still love the Night Court, I still love this book, I still devoured it so quickly. I absolutely adored it. I gave it 5 stars, of course I gave it 5 stars. It's not quite ACOMAF, but I loved it so much. And I'm already rereading the whole lot. I'm starting at ACOTAR again. I'm buddying it with Jess from Between the Lines, and we're going to read the whole lot. Because I want to read the whole lot back to back again, because I loved it so much. A couple of shout outs I want to put out there in terms of ACOMAF. One is Amina from Brown Girl Loves Books on Instagram. I will leave the link to her Instagram page down below. 2 is Melanie from It's a Bookish Thing 13. I watched her book review / discussion on her channel the other day and really enjoyed watching that, so I will leave a link to that video down there. And also G from Book Roast, who vlogged her reading process. It is an hour and a half long, so it is a process to watch, but I would recommend it because her views are always interesting. And I think with her it's really interesting to watch her vlog the process, like, so you can see her making predictions as she goes and stuff. It's great. I'll leave a link to her video down there as well. And there we go. Please chat to me in the comments about this book, because there's so much to discuss. I have been filming for a really long time. I don't know how long this is going to end up being, probably quite, but there's still so much left to discuss. There's so much I haven't said that there is potential to talk about, and I feel like this book because it's so big, not in size, like in popularity, everyone is going to have something to say about it if you've read it, obviously. And yeah, chat to me is what I want to say. Also, a little thing I want to say is that prior to the release of it, there was a lot of bad things going around, and quite simply, I don't agree with them. It was said that Sarah was shaming asexuals because of the twins in this book not being attracted to anyone, and her then saying that they were soulless. That's not how I interpreted that, and G mentioned this as well, but I interpreted that as those twins were sleeping with each other and no one else. They weren't asexual, they were incest, is how I took that. And I don't think she was calling them soulless for that reason. I think she was calling them soulless because they're murderers and terrible people. That's all I'm going to say, but people being called Nazis for liking this book is not acceptable, and that is not okay. That is the point I'm going to end this on. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please chat to me down in the comments about this book, because there is so much to say. And if you fancy subscribing and you aren't already, I'm always eternally grateful for that. I upload every Sunday and Wednesday, and my camera is about to die again, so I'm going to go. Bye!